All the songs today are related, and I'll let you know a story about that later on. Going to start with 3 songs from My Fair Lady. Julie Andrews got the lead role in the show, and she was only 20 years old. And during rehearsals, she was deathly afraid of the show. So they had to stop rehearsals for 2 days, and the director worked with her to help her through. At that time, there were no microphones for the singers, so they had to project over the orchestra. All the rehearsals were done in small theaters with piano. So on the day of the first preview in New Haven, Connecticut, Rex Harrison, for the first time, was in a theater of 1,600 seats and a 32-piece orchestra, and he was scared to death. And again, there were no microphones, so he had to project over the orchestra. Halfway through the show, he stopped, and he said, "I can't do this," and he walked out. There was a big snowstorm on its way into New Haven that day, so they couldn't get in touch with the people to let them know the show was canceled, and people started arriving at the theater. So somehow they got Rex Harrison back, and you have to realize he never went through the entire show with the orchestra. So he tried it, and what he did was he sang. Instead of singing, it was like trying to sing, but basically talking his way through. And it was a huge success, and that's what he became known for. After the show, they were going to do a movie of My Fair Lady, and Julie Andrews was very upset that she did not get the part in the movie. They gave it to Audrey Hepburn, who was a bigger star at the time. She lost the battle, but she won the war, because right after Audrey Hepburn got the part, Julie Andrews was offered the movie version of Sound of Music, which was a gigantic hit. Audrey Hepburn, on the other line of things, did not know until after the movie came out that all of her singing was overdubbed. She didn't have the voice to cut the part. So all of her songs were overdubbed by another singer. And if she said if she would have known that, she never would have done it. So everything that you see on the show was overdubbed. And these are 3 songs. I've grown accustomed to her face, I could have danced all night, and On the Street Where You Live. Thank you. Cole Porter. Again, all of these songs are tied together. Cole Albert Porter, June 9, 1891, born in Indiana, studied violin at age 6 and piano at 8. His first song was published when he was 11. He went to Yale Law to get a degree and wrote about 300 songs while at Yale, and then he switched to music at Harvard. He married socialite Linda Lee Thomas and spent the next 20 years partying, and these are two of his most famous songs. Thank you. The way these are all tied together, I used to perform at a place called the Carlton House Hotel. This was Madison at 61st Street. It was an in-residence private hotel owned by Harry Helmsley. Harry Helmsley, whose wife was Leona Helmsley. Harry Helmsley, at the time, was the richest man in the world. He owned the Empire State Building, if you could imagine his company owning the Empire State Building. And on the first night that I performed there, the maitre d' came up, and I was there 6 nights a week. The maitre d' came up and said, Mr. Helmsley is having dinner here tonight, and he has a list of 15 songs he wants you to play. I said, that's great. The man himself was here, and he had a whole entourage with him. So I played 15 songs. The second night I performed there, Harry Helmsley came in for dinner again, and the maitre d' came up and says, Mr. Helmsley has a list of 15 different songs he wants you to play tonight. Every night for the first week was 15 different songs. The second week, not only he would do 15 different songs, but he would always give me one song to be repeated, and each of the songs tonight were always repeated. Now, you have to figure I was there about 9 months, 6 nights a week, 15 different songs every night. That's a lot of music. So I started bringing what I call fake books. These are books that have 1,000 songs, so that when the man would request a song, and I started having this almost look like a wardrobe of music right next to me, and this was tuxedo attire every night. Came Thanksgiving Day, and I had to perform, and the people who had residence here were people like the Onassis family, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, Eugene O'Neill's wife had a residence there. It was people of that particular nature. And all the tables were filled on Thanksgiving Day, but they insisted that I eat Thanksgiving dinner. So what they did, they put a table for one in the middle of this huge dining room, and that's where I was going to have dinner. The Onassis family was right here, and I'm sitting here, and I'm a young guy, I'm sitting here in the middle of the dining room, just all by myself. And the waiter comes over and says, the appetizer tonight we have is clams on the half shell, and I think you should have it. I had no idea what he was talking about. So they brought this over, and as he opened the top, it's raw clams. And I'm looking at this, and I'm saying, I'm not going to be able to do this. So I figured I would try, and I took a clam in my mouth, and it went in this side, it went out this side, and it went on the floor in between the tables, in between my table and the Onassis family. So now I'm doing one of these things, trying to get the clam back under my table. I covered the rest, and I said to the maitre d' that we're finished with that. The waiter, Johnny, was always telling me that they had a favorite dish in his hometown in Cuba, and it was black bean soup. Now, again, I'm in full tuxedo attire, and he said, you have to have the black bean soup. And this is a true story. He comes in with his big ladle, and he brings it over to my table, and it slips out of his hand. And there's like 3 quarts of black bean soup that go into my soup plate on one side, out on the other, and on my tuxedo and my shirt, and I have black beans in my underwear and my socks. And I decide at that point it's time to go back to the piano, and I'm dripping along, And I get back to the piano, and the maitre d' says, by the way, these are the 15 songs Mr. Helmsley would like you to play tonight. This is just to lubricate the voice. On one of the shows that I did, my wife warned me that when you have tonic water, make sure you open it before the show. And it was one of the performances I did here a couple of years ago. And it fell off, and I forgot to open it. And right in the middle of the show, I opened this, and we had a shower, and the piano and me, we were covered. This is from George Gershwin. George Gershwin, absolutely fascinating. He was born of humble origins into a Russian Jewish immigrant family. And he studied classical piano, but he loved jazz. At age 15, he left high school to work in the music business in New York City's Tin Pan Alley. And music publishers hired him to play songs that people were submitting. So all day long, he would be in the rehearsal studios. His first song was published at 18. George Gershwin wrote the music, and his boyhood friend Irving Caesar wrote the lyrics. After George Gershwin became rather famous, his brother Ira Gershwin started writing the lyrics. His first big hit was Swanee. George Gershwin wrote Swanee in 15 minutes on a bus in New York City. Got to his office and he gave this to Irving Caesar, and in 10 minutes, Irving Caesar wrote the lyrics. Neither one of them has ever seen the Swanee River. The song went nowhere. Publishers said, it's horrible, we're not going to use it. They couldn't sell it. He was playing as a guest at a party for Al Jolson, and he got at the piano. Gershwin sat at the piano and played and sang Swanee, and Al Jolson heard it and fell in love with it. Al Jolson was appearing on Broadway at the time, and he put it into his show the next night. It immediately sold 1 million copies of the music and 2 million copies of the record. It was the biggest selling hit George Gershwin ever had. This you will get a big kick out of. And I'll tell you the story of it afterwards.
Thank you.
Now, I'll tell you the story about that. When I first met my wife, she had a wedding ring on. And I said hello, goodbye, and that was the end of it. And I had seen her a couple of times, and each time she had a wedding ring, and I would say hello and goodbye. I was conducting a concert one night, and during intermission, she came to me and she said, "Can I take you out for a drink tonight?" I said, "What's your husband gonna say?" And she said, No, I'm not married. She went to St. John's University and had a St. John's stone that was turned around, and I thought it was a wedding ring. So I said, "Well, better than that, why don't you come over my place tonight, because I'm having a party." And as soon as she left, I went over to all my friends. I said, "Please, you have to come over my place. I have to make it look like I'm having a party tonight." I invited this person over. That was a Thursday night, Wednesday or Thursday night. So at the party, I said to her, "How about on Sunday, because I'm not working, we go to Connecticut and have lunch?" And I had a little boat over in Northport Harbor. And so first date, we went over to a place called Admiral Benbow in Stamford, Connecticut, and had lunch. This is our first date. Coming back in Long Island Sound, I stopped the boat in the middle of the Sound, and she said, "What's the matter?" And I said, "Will you marry me?" She said, "This is our first date." I said, "Yes, will you marry me?" She said, "Well, I'm a teacher, so I have to be back in school in September, so it would have to be before September." This is June 2nd. I said, "That's fine." She went home, told her parents that she's getting, I'm sorry, let me go back again. She said, I accept, but there's only one problem. I'm engaged." I said, "Well, that's okay. Give me his phone number, and I will call him up tomorrow morning and break the engagement," which I did at 8 a.m. So that week, she told her parents she's getting married to Stan. And they said, Who is Stan?" So she said, "Well, he's this musician." So she said, I think you should meet him." And she brought her parents to the place that I was performing at. And this couldn't have been, I couldn't have timed this better. As her parents walked in, I was playing Begin the Begin. Little did I know that was her father's most favorite song in the entire world. I was an immediate hit with him. 3 months later, we were married, and that was 56 years ago. So Begin the Begin is a little special. How many of you remember the name Eddie Duchin? Okay. For those of you who don't, world famous pianist, absolutely incredible. Nobody has come along to match him. And when I was first married and I had no money in the world, my piano tuner told me about Eddie Duchin's piano that was going up for auction at an estate in Old Westbury the following Wednesday. And he said, this was a Sunday, he called me, he said, "Tomorrow, you go to this place, you beg them, ask them if you could just play this piano for 5 minutes. You'll never play a piano like this again." So I got there and I begged, and I guess they felt sorry for this skinny little kid. So they said 5 minutes, and then you have to leave. I played Eddie Duchin's Steinway grand piano the whole morning. They put 2 chairs next to me. They said, "You want to stay for lunch?" I said, "Can I play the piano afternoon?" Played the piano for the whole afternoon. They said, "Would you like to stay for dinner?" I said, "Can I play the piano after dinner?" I played that piano from 9 in the morning till 11 o'clock at night. And I said to them, "This has been the most phenomenal day in my life. I cannot thank you enough." And they said, "Would you like to take part in the auction on Wednesday?" At that time, and this is many, many years ago, the opening bid was $10,000. You can imagine what that's like in today's money. And I said, I couldn't even come near the opening bid. And they said, how much money do you have? I said, in the whole world, I have $400. And they walked out. And I figured, oh my God, these people let me play Eddie Duchin's piano all day long, and I just insulted them. Maybe I should just walk out. A couple of minutes later, they come back in, and they said, if you show up tomorrow morning with $400 and a moving truck, the piano is yours. I said, I can't do that. They said, case closed. Just on the off chance, I borrowed enough money for a moving company, showed up at 9 o'clock in the morning with $400, and I own Eddie Duchin's piano. It is my pride and joy. When my album came out, Peter Duchin, his son, who's Big Society, gave a great review, and he said, you can use that on. And then Peter said the next time he comes to Long Island, he's going to come over my house because he wants to see, he's always wondered whatever happened to his dad's piano. These are some of the songs that Eddie Duchin was made famous for, but they were also part of the Carlton House Hotel, Harry Helmsley. To tell you a story about this song. I'm not going to tell you the name of the country club. There's a gentleman who was a member of the super elite country club that I had met, and he came up to me and said, Stan, and we were at their beach house. I was playing piano. And he said, Stan, you have to do me a favor. Whenever I come up to the piano, you have to start playing But Not For Me, because I'm going to have a cigarette while my back is to my wife, and I'm not allowed to smoke, and she's not to know that I'm smoking. So whenever I come up, you start playing the song immediately, and when I finish smoking, you can go into another song. Every Wednesday, he would come up to the piano and said, it's time. This went on for 10 years. Every Wednesday night, he had a cigarette, and I played But Not For Me. So this is for him. And his wife never found out. She never knew.
Thank you.
Harry Helmsley, and this is the best of all. I'm there 9 months, and it's the week before Christmas. And the maitre d' says, you know, it's that time of year. Mr. Helmsley would like to do the right thing for you for Christmas. And he'd like you to come to his table during your break. And I sit down with the man. Now you have to figure, he came in by himself for dinner every single night. So now we're going 9 months of 15 new songs a night, 6 nights a week. And I'm building a huge repertoire. And he said, Stan, you've played every one of my songs. I really appreciate it, and I want to do the right thing for Christmas. And he takes out his wallet, and I figured, oh my God, my mortgage is paid. This is going to be it. Wait till my wife finds out. Takes out his wallet, and he puts a bill down on the table. And I'm trying to figure out what is the largest possible denomination of a single bill. And I look down, and it's a $1 bill. Harry Helmsley, the richest man in the world, gave me a Christmas bonus of $1. I went home to my wife, and I said, Harry Helmsley gave me a Christmas bonus tonight. And she said the same thing. Our mortgage is paid. And I showed her the $1. I still have this pinned on my wall. Harry said to me, Stan, I'm a little short of cash today, so my advertising executive is coming tomorrow, and we'll do the right thing with you. By the way, here's 15 more songs I'd like you to play tonight. The advertising executive shows up the next night, as well as Harry Helmsley, and he's sitting in the back. And he said, you know, when you take a break, please come up to me. He said, Mr. Helmsley was a little embarrassed. He was short of cash, but he wants to make it up for you. And he has this thick envelope. And I figured, okay, this is payday. And he says, open it up. I want to see your eyes when you look at it. And I open it up, honest to God. It's 2 tickets to the observation deck of the Empire State Building. And he says, but Stan, they expire in a week, so you have to use it within the week. I have the $1 bill and those 2 tickets on my wall in my office. Harry Helmsley, the richest man in the world. This you'll get a kick out of. Irving Caesar, who wrote with George Gershwin, I was in one of the hotels in Manhattan, and he heard me performing. And during the break, he said, he's doing a tour around the United States of the music that he wrote with George Gershwin. And he said, you're going to accompany me? I said, but I have a contract here. I'm performing at this hotel. He said, that's all right. I took care of it. You have a leave of absence starting tomorrow. You come to my office. And he gave me this pile of music. He said, we start rehearsals next week. So I killed myself learning all the songs that he wrote with George Gershwin. We opened up at the Richmond Coliseum the first night. It's just him and I on stage in front of 20,000 people. I've never seen 20,000 people in my life. And I have everything all prepared. And Irving Caesar says, ladies and gentlemen, before we start the show, we're here in the Deep South, and Stan is going to play an arrangement for you that he's been working on. He's going to do his version of Dixie. The only problem, I've never played Dixie in my life. And this is, I'm trying to make up an arrangement of Dixie in front of 20,000 people to make it sound like something. I probably lost 10 pounds on that song, and then he starts into singing one of the songs, but it's not the first song on the list because I had a whole notebook of everything he was doing in the order. He started with a song in the middle of the list, So with my right hand, I'm trying to play Follow Him. With my left hand, I'm trying to pull out the music. After all the rehearsals we did, he never did one song in the order that we rehearsed it. Every show we did, he did different orders. There was some shows he did songs that we never rehearsed, and I was dying just trying to follow him. That was Irving Caesar. You kind of learn. This is a great song by Cole Porter. George Gershwin was the wealthiest composer ever. Mozart was 35 when he passed away, and he was absolutely penniless. Gershwin, at 38, was the all-time richest composer, left an estate of millions and millions of dollars, and never had a will. This is one of his most famous, and it's my version of his Porgy and Bess. It's summertime, and I've got plenty of nothing. When he wrote Porgy and Bess and it debuted, it was a total flop. It was an absolute disaster, and it did not become popular until way after he passed away. So this will be a little bit different, and we'll close the program with my version for him. something just a little bit different. What I wanted to do is try to give you a little bit of a take on some of the stories. Every one of those songs, Harry Helmsley was requesting multiple times over. I stayed for about another 3 months after with the performance. And then, now you have to figure out, when I performed for 6 hours each night. So I played for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, and then I had to, and it was in contract, I had to take an 1.5 hour dinner break. And I had to eat. It was not a matter of choice. I had to eat. And I said, you know, I'm really not hungry. I don't eat one. It was in the contract. So every night I had to have a full meal, and then I had to go back and play for 2.5 hours. And I'd say to my wife, you know, I'm not going to eat at home because I'm supposed to have this huge meal at the Carlton House every night. So we're now 12 months performing at the Carlton House, and I get a notice from the maitre d' that I have 2 more weeks to perform, and then I'm finishing. And I said, was there a problem? He says, no, everybody loved you, and Mr. Helmsley loved you. I said, so why am I leaving? Honest to God. They said, the accountant wrote up how much food you've eaten in the last year and figured out how much it came to, and you're too expensive to have at the hotel. This is Harry Helmsley, the richest man in the world. And what I would be eating on the menu was the cheapest, smallest item, the smallest thing. But, and I think Leona Helmsley left in her will something like $14 million to her dog. Her dog. So I called my wife up, and this used to be a regular thing, and I'd say, tonight's my last night at the Carlton House Hotel. Pack your bags, we're going on vacation tomorrow. And that's how we lived for about 10 years. We did that, and then we traveled, and we had a great time. And I just want to thank you people for being absolutely wonderful, a wonderful audience, and I hope I brought a little joy to you. What I try to do is just kind of bring a little bit of humor and give you a kind of a little different version of some of the music, and I'm sure you know all the songs, so I hope at least I gave you a little bit of a take on what can be done on this. And I hope to see you again soon. Thank you so much.